There isn't a player out there that doesn't want to be more conditioned. There isn't a manager or coach out there that doesn't want their players or teams more conditioned. We're often looking at what the best teams do to see what kind of shuttles they run, what mass percentages they work off, but we tend to keep it pretty much inside GAA. Sometimes we need to look a little bit to one side to see what do elite endurance athletes do as top level runners, cyclists, cross-country skiers, maybe even swimmers. I'm going to jump in, see what their main training methods are and give you 8 sessions you can go and adapt for your own training based off practices of elite endurance athletes. Endurance performance across hurling, football, camogie and LGFA has reached all new levels in the last few years, largely through both game-based and various forms of interval type training. That type of training has massive carryover to what we do in the field, but is likely to lead to some form of plateau after a while. On the flip side, there have also been massive improvements in endurance performance, running, cycling, swimming, cross-country skiing. They realised in those fields a few years ago that you need that nice balance between interval type training and steady type training. We're going to look here at some types of training that can be really useful. Swimming probably doesn't have the greatest carryover because some people aren't the most efficient swimmers and getting to a pool isn't logistically the most ideal. Many cyclists have reached unbelievable levels of performance. Cycling on a bike is good, it's not that tough on the body, but some of their traditional workouts can just be really long because some of the races are 5, 6, even 7 hours long. Elite runners, while there are numerous different ways of targeting the different types of training they do, we can divide most of their training into 3 different subcategories. That's what we're going to look at here now. We're going to look at 2 potential sessions we can use from each of the 3 categories. We'll see how we can do it as runners, but also how it can be adapted across as cross-training to be done on a bike, cross-trainer, assault bike, row machine, essentially whatever you have access to that just ultimately won't be as tough on the body, so you can do your running type stuff on your pitch-based training and use this for some cross-training to develop your conditioning but still leave you feeling that bit fresher and more developed for pitch stuff. While this is simplifying things a bit, essentially we can divide up most of what a lot of runners, particularly those that target that 5 to 10k distance down to, are 3 different types of session. Aerobic threshold or tempo type stuff, lactate threshold are sometimes looked at are very close to critical speed, or VO2 type stuff, the really fast bits that we do. Now like I said, this is mainly aimed at 5k, 10k runners. Not to say going out and doing a load of 5Ks and 10Ks would be beneficial for your GAA pitch performance, but training like 5k and 10k runners, because of how they break up their training over the course of a week, a month or a training block, can be really useful and is a massive supplement to, or provides a really good foundation to the various interval type stuff you do in the rest of your training. We'll start off looking at some aerobic threshold type stuff. This is the type of thing the majority of field sport based players, GAA, soccer, rugby, whatever it might be, would probably benefit the most from, but are the least likely to do. One of the classic workouts that an awful lot of decent level runners would do here is mile repeats. They're talking about doing 4, 5 reps. You're talking like a mile in the 6 to 7 minute bracket. So I'm quite slow at stuff like this, so I'm aiming for around 7 minutes. Some better runners will be hoping to get these done in 6 or 6.5. So to translate that across, instead of constantly trying to cover a mile or 1600 meters, we're going to move everything across from distance suggested stuff to time suggested stuff, so they're adjustable based on your own fitness level. What I'm going to suggest here instead of mile repeats is 4 or 5 reps by 6 or 7 minutes. So you're putting together about 30 to 35 minutes of total work. If you're not used to this type of run, it will be a little bit hard to control and you'll need a decent heart rate monitor for it. I know I haven't gotten a bit of testing done. I'm aiming for somewhere in between 145 and 156 beats per minute. That will be a little bit different for you. The other thing I'd aim for, and probably your best gauge if you can learn to work off this, is an RPE of 5, max 6 out of 10, but really trying to keep things at a 5 out of 10. This would often be prescribed when written down as a session as a steady or a tempo workout. So you're not looking to go too hard. You shouldn't be able to have a full conversation. You should be able to state a few sentences if doing this alongside someone else. It's good to do as running. if you have some bit of running base built up, or works really well as a bike or a cross trainer session. Still aiming for the same RP of 5, max 6 out of 10, and look to take maybe 2, max 3 minutes recovery between each of these. The second classic aerobic threshold session I'm going to say here is 3 by 10 minutes. Look to say hold the same pace or in or around the same heart rate for all this. Again, aim for that 5, max 6 out of 10. You might be thinking it's 5 out of 10 for the first rep and getting up towards a 6 out of 10 effort for the last 2 or 3 minutes of the final rep. Again, 2 or 3 minutes recovery works really well on a bike or a cross trainer. You can try it running, but those longer efforts might be a little bit harder if you're not used to running at sustained paces. Don't get too excited here and try and say, oh, what's the best distance or the best pace I could run in a 10-minute block here. Try and pull yourself back, keep it nice and steady. You should be able to have those few sentences with someone else if they're beside you and keep it really, really controlled and smooth. Even if pace does go up a little bit or down a little bit, it's heart rate that you really want to keep nice and smooth, bar the first minute while it catches up, but for the rest of the effort. The next section we're going to look at here is our lactate threshold reps. These are uncomfortably comfortable reps, or where runners will do an awful lot of their training. One of the classic workouts for this are 1K or K repeats. Decent runners will do these in 4 minutes or quite a bit quicker even, whereas middle of the road, you can do a 5K in sub 20. You would look to accumulate a certain amount of time doing kilometres around that 4 minute per kilometre pace. A typical session would be 5 to 6 reps of 1K, or to translate that straight across the time, so it's adjustable based on whatever your fitness level is, you're looking to put together 4 minutes of work. 5, maybe max 6 reps of 4 minutes, where you're looking to hold something that's, like I said, uncomfortably comfortable. You could get out a few words to the person beside you, maybe a short sentence, but definitely not a long sentence. You need your full recovery after these. You're talking 2 minutes of walking or get off a bike or super easy pedaling if you're doing it that way. Your heart rate, I know, again, having mine tested, I'm looking to be high 150s to the mid 160s, or an RP of around 7 out of 10. That's a 70% max, 75% effort for these. Translates across really well to doing 5 or 6 4-minute efforts on a bike or cross trainer. Can be done running. Don't try and push that bit too hard to try and complete a kilometre in 4 minutes. If you're just pushing that little bit too hard, you end up fatiguing yourself and building up a load of lactate. You just won't get near the same amount of fitness benefits from something like this. The other classic lactate threshold workout is to do reps that are about 3 minutes long. You can push ever so slightly harder. You can slightly build into these, and you're looking to start around 6 reps of this and maybe push up towards 8. So that's 6, 7 or 8 by 3 minutes. You can go ever so slightly harder because you don't have as much time you're working for. You can maybe take about 90 seconds for recovery. And over the course of the 6, 7 or 8 reps, you can start nice and slow, controlled, conservative, but build up the pace as you work through all these, or build up the heart rate. Maybe your first couple of reps, you might be in the mid 150s for heart rate, but you build up to the mid to high 160s towards the end of these. Again, aiming for an RP of around 7, max 7.5. I'd really try not to let yourself get into that 8 out of 10 range. The last section then are VO2 type sessions. These are the ones we think will impact our VO2 max the most, but ultimately they only have that big impact if we've laid the foundation with a bunch of aerobic work beforehand. It's where most of us probably do an awful lot of our reps, particularly longer reps, because we think they're going to give us the most benefit, but ultimately we should only dip into these sparingly enough, maybe for a 4-week block or every second week for 6 to 8 weeks. Ultimately, you're pushing for these. I'm not even going to suggest a heart rate range because it's around what your own max heart rate is, so you're going to be pushing up very close to that in a lot of the reps. A classic workout for this would be 6, 8, maybe 10 by 400 meters. The better runners are looking to do these in 90 seconds, maybe 75 seconds for the really good runners. So we'll use time for similar. We're going to look at 90-second reps. We're going to start off with 6 by 90 seconds and eventually build up over the course of a few weeks to 8 by 90 seconds. And look to really push the intensity on these. Give yourself decent recovery, at least a minute, but realistically you could let it go up to 90 seconds. If you're doing them running based, take full walk, even standing around recovery. If you're on a bike, you're pedaling really, really slow, or get off if necessary, as long as the bike doesn't turn off. And you're looking for an RP of 8, 9. Try not to push into that 10 range because they can just be too hard to recover from, bar that final rep. The other session here, going purely off time, is 10 reps of 60 seconds on, 60 seconds off. Push really hard for the 60 seconds on, and then complete walk or really slow jog recovery for the 60 seconds off. Again, it's an 8 or 9 out of 10. You're really pushing. You're trying to find somewhat of a flat ground if you're doing it running based, or on a bike, you're looking to get the cadence, that's the RPM and the intensity up nice and high, really feel yourself working, and then bring it right back down for the 60 seconds off. If you find yourself a little bored doing any of those typical category-based sessions, you can throw in a mixed-based session or a cut-down session. These are really good if you're looking to do something off-feet or just a little bit different on a week off training, you have a little bit of an ankle injury and you're doing something on a bike. You want to hit on all the various different bits of fitness, even if just because it's like a once-off or you're not looking to build over the course of a few weeks. One sample cut-down session I like to do, and I've found an awful lot of benefit from and can be part of a longer session, is you do 15 minutes of aerobic threshold, so that's 5 out of 10, take 3 minutes recovery, go into 10 minutes, slightly harder, maybe 5.5, 6 out of 10, 2 minutes recovery, 5 minutes lactate threshold, so that's 7 out of 10, you're taking another 2 minutes recovery, and then you're doing 5 by 1 minute on, 1 minute off, and you're really pushing these, looking to get a little bit faster or push a little bit higher, say watts or RPM if it's on a bike, over the course of those 5 reps. Nice long recovery then afterwards, because you'll need a bit of time to recover after a session like that. A lot of volume in it, but a nice mixture across the different zones or fitness types. The last mix session then, and this can be done using hills or on flat ground, although I would recommend either hills or doing it as an off-feed session. You're going to do 10 minutes nice and steady, somewhere between 5, 6, maybe push. Your first rep's definitely only between 5 and 6 out of 10. You have two options here. You can either do 8 by 60 seconds on, 60 seconds off, again pushing that 8 or 9 out of 10, or try and find a hill and do 10 by 30 seconds, walk or jog back down to the start, finish that off with 10 minutes steady again at the end. You're going to try and keep the same pace for the two 10-minute efforts at the start and the end, but having done those 60-second efforts or hills in the middle, you'll find your heart rate will increase a little bit in that second 10-minute steady effort. If you're doing it on a bike, keep yourself nice and steady for those first 2 efforts, but really crank up the intensity for either the 60 seconds on or the 30 seconds on in that middle bit, so you feel a nice bit of fatigue and you're pushing hard in the legs, but then something higher reps but lower intensity for the final 10-minute block. 8 sessions there you can use just to supplement your fitness at various stages throughout the season. Whether it be a case of you have some kind of niggle, you can't do your normal running, so you're trying to build yourself up with some off-feed sessions, you're just trying to do one extra supplemental session a week to boost fitness without having too much of an overall load on the body through extra running, or you're biding your time before you go back on the pitch for all the running sessions, but you want a decent level of aerobic fitness built up. Every one of those sessions will be a massive help. I would suggest steering a little bit clear of doing too much of the VO2 Max type sessions and really trying to focus on the aerobic threshold, some lactate threshold, or dipping in the mixed or cut down sessions. If you want more suggestions around these types of sessions, or you just want to hit some new 5k or 10k PBs in an off-season block, feel free to get in touch, as we've any amount of 5k and 10k plans we can use with people or help develop them through some bespoke one-on-one coaching.